Jake Morrison sat in his office at the United Nations building, staring at the strange message that had arrived just 2 hours ago. The transmission came from somewhere in deep space, and the computer systems were still trying to figure out exactly where. He read the words again, each one making less sense than before. Greetings to the inhabitants of the Class 3th Death World known as Terra. The Galactic Council extends an invitation to your species to join our peaceful confederation of civilized beings. We request that 2 representatives from your world travel to Council Station Nexus for initial discussions. Due to safety protocols, only 2 individuals may attend this first meeting. Jake rubbed his temples and looked across his desk at Dr. Lisa Carter, who was reading her own copy of the message. Lisa was one of Earth's top experts on biology and had spent years studying how life might exist on other worlds. If anyone could make sense of this, it would be her. They called Earth a death world, Lisa said, looking up from the document. That's not exactly a friendly way to start a conversation. Maybe it's just their way of saying we live on a dangerous planet. Jake replied. You know, natural disasters, wild animals, diseases, things like that. Lisa shook her head. I don't think so. Look at how they wrote it. Class 13 Death World. That sounds like a rating system, like they have different levels of dangerous worlds, and we're at level 12. Jake had been a diplomat for 20 years. He had handled tough negotiations with world leaders, peace talks between warring nations, and trade discussions that went on for months. But this was completely different. This was contact with aliens from space, something he had never trained for or even imagined he would face. Captain Walsh is on his way down from the space station, Jake said. His ship picked up the transmission first. Maybe he has more information. The door opened and Captain Ryan Walsh walked in, still wearing his space uniform. He looked tired, like he had been awake for days. He probably had been. His exploration ship, the UNS Venture, spent months at a time at the edge of human space, looking for signs of other life. Sir, Captain Walsh said, sitting down heavily in a chair. We've been monitoring unusual signals for 3 weeks. This message came through on a frequency we've never seen before. The technology behind it is far beyond anything we have. How far beyond? Lisa asked. They sent this message across several light years and it arrived in perfect condition. No signal loss, no interference. Our best communications equipment can barely reach the outer planets clearly. Jake leaned back in his chair. Humanity had been reaching for the stars for decades, sending out radio signals and launching space probes, hoping to find evidence of other intelligent life. Now that life had found them first, and Jake wasn't sure if that was good news or bad news. The message mentioned safety protocols, Jake said. What kind of safety issues could there be at a space station meeting? Captain Walsh pulled out a tablet and showed them some data. We've been analyzing the signal source. The station they want us to visit is massive, bigger than anything we could build. But here's the strange part. The energy signatures suggest the whole thing is built for low-stress environments. Everything about it screams delicate. Delicate how? Lisa asked. Think about how we build things on Earth. We use strong materials because we have to deal with weather, earthquakes, wear, and tear. This station looks like it was built by people who never had to worry about anything going wrong. Lisa frowned. That doesn't make sense. If they have space travel technology, they must have faced some challenges. You can't develop advanced science without running into problems. Unless, Jake said slowly, they never had the kind of problems we deal with on Earth. The 3 of them sat in silence for a moment. Jake thought about what that might mean. Earth was a world of constant change and danger. Storms, earthquakes, volcanoes, climate shifts, diseases, predators, and 1,000 other things that could kill a person without warning. Humans had survived by becoming tough, adaptable, and quick to react to threats. If we're going to this meeting, Jake said, we need to be prepared for anything. Lisa, I want you to come with me. We'll need someone who understands biology and science. Why me? Lisa asked. There are other scientists who might be better for this. Because you think about life in terms of adaptation and survival. If these aliens are as different from us as this message suggests, we'll need someone who can figure out why. Captain Walsh stood up. I'll prepare the venture for a long journey. Based on the signal source, we're looking at about 3 weeks of travel time each way. 3 weeks to think about what we're getting into, Jake said. Over the next few days, Jake and Lisa worked together to prepare for the mission. They studied every piece of information Earth had about space, other planets, and the possibility of alien life. Most of it was guesswork and theory, but some patterns started to emerge. "Look at this," Lisa said, pointing to a chart on her computer screen. "Every planet we've found that might support life is much more stable than Earth. Smaller temperature ranges, fewer natural disasters, more predictable weather patterns." "So Earth really is more dangerous than most worlds," Jake said. "Much more dangerous. If these aliens developed on safer worlds, they might not understand how tough life on Earth has to be just to survive." Jake was starting to get a picture of what they might be walking into. A meeting with aliens who had never faced the kind of challenges that humans dealt with every day. Beings who might see humans as something strange and frightening, simply because humans had learned to live with danger. "There's something else," Lisa said. "The message talks about a peaceful confederation of civilized beings. What if they think peace means the absence of any conflict or risk? Then they're going to be very confused by humans," Jake replied. The day before departure, Jake received a final briefing from the UN Security Council. Every nation on Earth had voted to support the mission, but there were concerns about what humans might accidentally reveal about themselves. "Remember," the Secretary General told him, "we don't know how these aliens will react to learning about human history, our wars, our conflicts, our willingness to take risks. Be careful about what information you share." Jake understood the concern, but he also knew that honesty would be important for building trust. If these aliens were as peaceful as they claimed, they would eventually learn about human nature anyway. Better to be upfront about it than to try hiding the truth. As Jake and Lisa boarded the shuttle that would take them to the UNS venture, Jake felt a mix of excitement and worry. They were about to become the first humans to meet intelligent life from another world. Whatever happened at that meeting would shape the future relationship between Earth and the rest of the galaxy. The shuttle lifted off and headed for space, carrying 2 humans toward a meeting that would change everything. The journey to Council Station Nexus took exactly 21 days through hyperspace. Jake Morrison spent most of that time reviewing diplomatic protocols while Dr. Lisa Carter studied the limited information they had about alien biology. Captain Walsh kept the UNS venture running smoothly, but even he seemed nervous about what they might find at their destination. When they finally dropped out of hyperspace, the sight that greeted them took their breath away. Council Station Nexus was enormous, easily 10 times larger than any space station humans had ever built. It looked like a crystal flower floating in space with delicate spires and graceful curves that seemed to glow with their own inner light. "Beautiful," Lisa whispered, staring out the viewport. "And fragile," Captain Walsh added. "Look at those connecting structures. They're so thin I'm surprised they don't break under their own weight." Jake studied the station through binoculars. Everything about it suggested a civilization that had never needed to worry about structural failure or emergency repairs. The docking bays were works of art rather than functional engineering, and the whole station looked like it had been grown rather than built. A communication signal came through the ship's speakers. The voice was melodic and pleasant, speaking in perfect English with just a slight accent that sounded almost musical. "UNS Venture, this is Ambassador Zeth Ka of the Vitarian Collective. Welcome to Council Station Nexus. Please follow the guidance beacons to Docking Bay 7. We have prepared special accommodations for your arrival." Captain Walsh followed the blinking lights that led them toward the station. As they got closer, Jake could see other ships docked at various bays. They were all beautiful and graceful, but none of them looked like they could survive a serious impact or equipment failure. "Special accommodations," Lisa repeated. "That doesn't sound promising." The docking process took longer than expected, because Docking Bay 7 had been heavily reinforced compared to the others. Thick metal plating covered surfaces that were delicate crystal elsewhere on the station. The docking clamps that grabbed their ship were 3 times stronger than the ones Jake could see in nearby bays. "They really are worried about us damaging something," Captain Walsh said. When the docking was complete, Jake and Lisa put on their best diplomatic uniforms and prepared to leave the ship. They had decided to wear standard Earth formal wear rather than spacesuits, hoping to appear friendly and non-threatening. Now Jake wondered if that had been a mistake. The airlock opened and they stepped onto the station. The first thing Jake noticed was how quiet everything was. On human space stations, there was always background noise from air recyclers, machinery, and people moving around. Here, the only sound was a gentle humming that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Ambassador Zethka was waiting for them in the docking bay. He was tall and thin, with skin that looked like it was made of living crystal. His face was kind, but Jake could see nervous energy flickering through the crystal formations on his arms and shoulders. "Welcome, humans," Zethka said, his voice carrying that same musical quality they had heard over the radio. "I am honored to be your guide during your stay. Please, follow me to your quarters." As they walked through the station corridors, Jake noticed that other beings stopped to stare at them. There were dozens of different alien species, some floating in environmental suits, others walking on legs that seemed too delicate to support their weight. All of them watched the humans with expressions that Jake couldn't quite read, but which didn't look entirely friendly. The corridors themselves were amazing. The walls seemed to be made of some kind of living material that glowed softly and shifted colors as they passed. The floor felt strange under their feet, cushioned and warm, like walking on a thick carpet. "Your quarters are in Section 7, Zethka explained as they walked. "We have made special modifications to ensure your comfort and safety." "Safety?" Lisa asked. "Yes, we have reinforced the structures and installed additional safety barriers. We want to make sure there are no unfortunate accidents during your stay." Jake was starting to understand that the aliens weren't worried about keeping the humans safe. They were worried about keeping the station safe from the humans. They passed through several common areas where aliens were gathered in small groups. Jake tried to walk normally, but he noticed that his footsteps seemed much louder than anyone else's. Several times, small decorative objects vibrated or chimed when he walked past them. "The station is quite delicate," Zethka said, noticing Jake's concern. "We have learned to move very carefully to avoid disturbing the harmonic systems." Lisa accidentally brushed against a wall sculpture as they walked, and a small crack appeared in its surface. Several nearby aliens gasped and moved away from her. Zethka's crystal formations flickered more rapidly. "Please be very careful," he said, his musical voice carrying a note of worry. "These artworks are irreplaceable and extremely fragile." "I'm sorry," Lisa said. "I barely touched it." "Yes, we understand that your species has different physical capabilities. This is why we have prepared special quarters for you." When they reached Section 7, Jake saw what Zethka meant by special quarters. The entire section had been rebuilt with thick metal walls and reinforced floors. It looked like a bunker compared to the rest of the station. The doors were heavy and solid, designed to contain something dangerous rather than to provide comfortable living space. "This is where you will stay during your visit," Zethka said. "The walls are reinforced, and the furniture has been specially constructed to withstand normal human use. There are also emergency barriers that can be activated if needed." Jake looked around the room. It was comfortable enough, but it was clearly designed as a containment area. The message was clear. The aliens considered humans to be potentially dangerous to their delicate environment. "We have also arranged for medical examinations," Zethka continued. "Dr. Philux from our medical staff would like to conduct safety scans to ensure that no harmful organisms are transferred between our species." Lisa nodded. "That's a reasonable precaution. We brought our own medical records if that would be helpful." "Yes, that would be most appreciated. Dr. Philux will meet with you in 1 hour. Until then, please make yourselves comfortable and try not to touch anything unless absolutely necessary." After Zethka left, Jake and Lisa sat down on the reinforced furniture and looked at each other. "They're terrified of us," Lisa said. "Can you blame them?" Jake replied, looking around at the heavy-duty construction of their quarters. "Look at this place. It's like they built a cage." Lisa walked over to one of the walls and examined the reinforcement work. "This isn't just about protecting decorations. Look at how thick these walls are. They're not just worried about us breaking things by accident. They think we might be actively dangerous." Jake thought about the way the other aliens had stared at them in the corridors. It wasn't curiosity or friendliness. It was fear and suspicion. Maybe this meeting isn't going to go the way we hoped, he said. Maybe not, Lisa agreed. But we're here now. We might as well see what they want to tell us. An hour later, Dr. Phillips arrived for the medical examination. He was unlike anything Jake had ever imagined. Dr. Phillips seemed to be made of gas or smoke, contained within a transparent environmental suit. He moved by floating rather than walking, and his voice came through speakers built into his suit. "Greetings, humans," Dr. Phillips said. "I hope you will not mind these medical procedures. They are necessary for the safety of all beings on the station." The examination was unlike any medical checkup Jake had ever experienced. Dr. Phillips used scanning devices that passed through the air around them without touching. He seemed particularly interested in their breathing and skin temperature. "Fascinating, Dr. Phillips said after several minutes of scanning. "Your bodies contain numerous dormant organisms that would be highly dangerous to most council species, yet they cause you no harm whatsoever." "Dormant organisms?" Lisa asked. "Bacteria, viruses, other microorganisms. Your bodies carry hundreds of different types. Most council species would die from exposure to even one of these organisms, yet you carry them as part of your normal biology." Jake was beginning to understand why they had been given such isolated quarters. To these aliens, humans weren't just physically dangerous, they were walking biological weapons. The medical examination continued for another hour, with Dr. Phillips becoming increasingly amazed and worried by what he discovered about human biology. When he finally finished, he floated back from them as far as his environmental suit would allow. "I must report these findings to the council immediately," he said. "Please remain in your quarters until we can determine appropriate safety protocols." After he left, Jake and Lisa found themselves alone in their reinforced room, wondering what they had gotten themselves into. The next morning, Ambassador Zethka arrived at their quarters with news that the council was ready to meet with them. He looked even more nervous than before, his crystal formations flickering rapidly as he spoke. "The Grand Assembly Chamber has been prepared for your attendance," he said. "Special safety measures have been put in place to ensure the comfort of all participants." Jake Morrison put on his best diplomatic smile and straightened his tie. "We're honored to attend. Is there anything specific we should know about Council? Protocols? Please move slowly and speak softly," Zethka replied. "Many of our species are sensitive to sudden movements and loud sounds. Also, please avoid touching any surfaces unless absolutely necessary." Dr. Lisa Carter gathered her notes and scientific data. She had spent the night preparing a presentation about human civilization, focusing on their achievements in medicine and technology. She hoped that showing humanity's peaceful accomplishments might help ease the aliens' fears. The journey to the assembly chamber took them through parts of the station they hadn't seen before. Everywhere they went, aliens stopped what they were doing to stare at the two humans. Some backed away into alcoves or side corridors. Others activated what looked like personal protection devices that created shimmering barriers around their bodies. "Are they afraid we're going to attack them?" Lisa whispered to Jake. "I think they're afraid we're going to exist too loudly," Jake whispered back. The Grand Assembly Chamber was breathtaking. It was a massive spherical room with no clear floor or ceiling. Delegates from dozens of different species floated, swam, or rested in environmental suits designed for their specific needs. Some aliens lived in pools of liquid, others in clouds of gas, and still others seemed to exist as patterns of light or energy. Jake and Lisa were guided to a reinforced platform near the edge of the chamber. The platform was clearly built to be much stronger than the delicate structures supporting other delegates. It was also positioned far away from everyone else, creating a buffer zone between the humans and the rest of the assembly. Council Prime, Haithlund floated at the center of the chamber. She was an elderly being whose species communicated through patterns of color that flowed across their skin like living art. When she spoke, her words came through translation devices that turned her color patterns into sound. "Welcome, representatives of the Terran Deathworld," Haithlund said, her colors shifting to warm, welcoming patterns. "We are honored to meet the survivors of such a dangerous world. Please tell us about your species and your civilization." Jake, stepped forward carefully, moving slowly as Zethka had instructed. Even so, his movement caused several nearby delegates to activate their personal shields. He could hear whispered conversations in languages the translation system couldn't handle, but the tone was clearly worried. "Thank you for inviting us to this gathering," Jake said, keeping his voice as quiet as possible. "Humanity is grateful for this opportunity to join the galactic community. We come in peace, hoping to learn from your wisdom and share our own knowledge." The translation of his words seemed to cause some confusion among the delegates. Several species began communicating rapidly with each other, their various forms of speech creating a symphony of colors, sounds, and energy patterns. "When you say, 'Join the galactic community,'" said a delegate whose species looked like floating jellyfish, "do you mean as equals or as subjects?" Jake was confused by the question. "As equals, of course. We hope to participate fully in whatever programs and initiatives the Council supports." This answer seemed to worry the aliens even more. A delegate that looked like a walking tree made a sound that the translators couldn't convert to human speech, but which clearly expressed distress. Lisa stepped forward with her presentation materials. "Perhaps it would help if we explained some of humanity's achievements," she said. "We've made great progress in science, medicine, and technology." She activated a holographic display that showed images of human hospitals, laboratories, and research facilities. The aliens watched with growing amazement and horror as she explained human medical practices. "This is called surgery," Lisa said, showing an image of an operating room. "When humans are injured or diseased, we cut into their bodies to repair the damage." Several delegates made sounds of shock and disgust, the jellyfish-like being actually fled to the far side of the chamber. "You deliberately cause injury to treat injury?" asked Dr. Felix, who was attending the session from within, his environmental suit. "Well, yes," Lisa said. "Sometimes you have to cause a little harm to prevent greater harm. It's a calculated risk." The phrase calculated risk seemed to cause even more distress among the assembly. Delegates began activating emergency communication systems, and Jake could see security drones moving into position around the chamber. Lisa continued her presentation, not realizing the effect her words were having. She showed images of human space exploration, describing how astronauts lived and worked in dangerous environments for months at a time. "Our space workers regularly face vacuum exposure, radiation, and equipment failures," she explained. "But they accept these risks because the scientific benefits are worth the danger." "You send your people into situations where they might die?" asked a crystalline being that Jake thought might be related to Zethka's species. "Sometimes," Lisa admitted. "But we take every precaution to keep them safe. We have extensive training programs and safety equipment." Jake was starting to realize that their presentation was making things worse rather than better. Every example of human achievement seemed to reinforce the aliens' belief that humans were dangerously reckless beings. "Perhaps we should discuss human culture and society," Jake said, trying to steer the conversation in a safer direction. He began describing human civilization, carefully avoiding any mention of wars or conflicts. He talked about art, literature, music, and sports. But even these topics seemed to worry the aliens. "You mentioned competitive sports," said a gas being whose voice sounded like wind through leaves. "Do humans actually fight each other for entertainment?" "Not fight exactly," Jake said. "More like organized contests with rules and safety measures." "But people sometimes get injured in these contests?" the being pressed. "Sometimes, but rarely. Seriously. We have medical teams standing by to help if anything goes wrong." The fact that humans needed medical teams at their entertainment events seemed to confirm the aliens' worst fears about human nature. Council Prime Ethlun's colors shifted to patterns that the translator identified as deep concern. "Representative Morrison, are you saying that humans regularly engage in activities that might cause harm simply for pleasure?" Jake realized he was trapped. Every honest answer he gave seemed to make humans sound more dangerous and reckless. But lying would be worse than telling an uncomfortable truth. "Humans enjoy challenges," he said carefully. "We like to test our limits and push ourselves to achieve new things. Sometimes that involves taking risks, but we try to manage those risks responsibly. The chamber fell silent, except for the quiet humming of various life support systems. Jake could feel dozens of alien eyes focused on him and Lisa, studying them like dangerous animals in a zoo. Finally, a new voice spoke up from across the chamber. It belonged to a delegate that Jake hadn't noticed before, a species that looked somewhat like a giant insect with multiple arms and glowing eyes. "I am Counselor Hickstra of the Zephyrian Empire," the being said. "I have listened to these presentations with growing alarm. These humans admit to deliberately harming their own people, sending them into deadly environments, and engaging in violent competitions for entertainment. They carry diseases that could kill most of our species, and they come from a world so dangerous that it has shaped them into beings who consider risk-taking to be normal behavior." Hickstra's multiple arms gestured dramatically as he continued speaking. "I submit to this council that apex predators from Deathworlds have no place in our peaceful civilization. These humans represent everything we have evolved beyond. They are violence incarnate, chaos given form. To allow them into our community would be to invite destruction upon everything we have built." The accusation hung in the air like a physical presence. Jake felt the weight of every alien gaze in the chamber, and none of them looked friendly anymore. "We are not violent," Lisa said, her voice carrying a slight edge of frustration. "Everything we've described shows how humans work together to solve problems and help each other. By cutting each other open and sending each other into deadly environments," Hickstra replied. "You prove my point with every word you speak." Jake realized that they had walked into a trap without knowing it. The council hadn't invited humans to join their civilization. They had invited them to judge whether humanity was too dangerous to be allowed to exist. Jake Morrison stood up slowly, trying to keep his movements as non-threatening as possible. The accusation from Counselor Hickstra still echoed in the chamber, and he could feel the fear radiating from dozens of alien species. He had been a diplomat, long enough to know when a situation was about to go very wrong. "Counselor Hickstra," Jake said, his voice calm and steady. "I understand your concerns, but I think there's been a misunderstanding about human nature. We're not the violent predators." "You think we are? Then explain," Hickstra replied, his multiple arms clicking together in what seemed like an aggressive gesture. "Explain how beings who cut open their own kind for medicine and send their people into deadly space can claim to be peaceful." "Doctor." Lisa Carter stepped forward, her scientific mind already working on how to address the misunderstanding. "What you're seeing as violence is actually how humans take care of each other," she said. "Surgery saves lives. Space exploration advances knowledge. Even our sports are about pushing ourselves to be better, not about hurting others." "You speak of calculated risks," said the jellyfish-like delegate who had fled earlier but was now floating back toward the discussion. "No civilized species deliberately puts their people in danger for any reason." Lisa looked around the chamber, at all the alien species in their perfect environmental suits and protected habitats. "How did your species develop space travel?" she asked. "Didn't anyone have to take risks to test new technologies or explore unknown areas?" The question seemed to confuse many of the delegates. A crystalline being similar to Zeth Ka spoke up. "Our development was gradual and safe. We tested everything extensively before any individual was exposed to risk. No one was harmed in the process. But someone had to be first," Jake said. "Someone had to pilot the first spaceship or test the first life support system. We used automated systems and computer simulations," the crystalline being replied. "We would never risk actual lives for mere advancement." Jake was beginning to understand the fundamental difference between humans and the rest of galactic civilization. These aliens had achieved everything through careful, risk-free development over thousands of years. They couldn't comprehend a species that advanced through trial and error, learning from mistakes and accepting casualties as part of progress. "Let me tell you about human evolution," Lisa said, bringing up a new holographic display. "Our planet Earth has faced 5 major extinction events: ice ages, asteroid impacts, volcanic eruptions, climate changes that killed most life on the planet. Humans survived because we learned to adapt quickly and take risks when necessary. The images she showed seemed to horrify the alien delegates. Pictures of hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and other natural disasters made several species activate emergency protective protocols. "Your world tried to kill you repeatedly," said Dr. Felix, his gaseous form swirling rapidly inside his environmental suit. "And you survived by becoming more dangerous than your environment." "We survived by becoming more resilient," Lisa corrected. "More adaptable, more willing to help each other when things went wrong." Jake decided to try a different approach. "What happens when your civilizations face genuine emergencies?" he asked. "When something goes wrong that your safety systems can't handle?" The question caused an uncomfortable silence in the chamber. Finally, Council Prime Ethlun's colors shifted to patterns the translator identified as sadness. "We have lost several worlds to natural disasters," she admitted. "When our safety systems fail, we evacuate what populations we can and abandon the rest. We lack the ability to operate in truly dangerous environments." "That's exactly why you need humans in your community," Jake said. "Not as predators or destroyers, but as the people who can go where no one else can survive." Before anyone could respond to Jake's statement, alarms began sounding throughout the chamber. Emergency lights flashed, and automated voices in dozens of languages announced the same message. "Critical system failure in Outer Ring 7. All personnel evacuate immediately. Repeat, critical system failure in Outer Ring 7. The effect on the alien delegates was immediate panic. Emergency protocols activated throughout the chamber as species after species began emergency evacuation procedures. Environmental suits sealed themselves, and protective barriers sprang up around vulnerable delegates. "What's happening?" Jake asked Zethka, who was frantically operating some kind of communication device. "Explosive decompression in the outer ring," Zethka replied, his crystal formations flickering with stress patterns. "A massive system failure. The automated emergency systems are struggling to contain the damage." Through the chamber's transparent walls, Jake could see the affected section of the station. Atmosphere was venting into space through a huge breach in the hull, and debris was floating everywhere. Emergency lights flashed around sealed blast doors that had closed to prevent the damage from spreading. "Are there people trapped in that section?" Lisa asked. "3 maintenance technicians," Dr. Felix announced, reading from his scanning equipment. "They were performing routine work when the failure occurred. Emergency rescue protocols have been activated, but the environment is too dangerous for normal rescue operations." Jake watched as alien rescue teams attempted to approach the damaged section. Their equipment was clearly designed for safe, controlled environments, not emergency rescue operations in a disaster zone. The rescue drones couldn't handle the debris field, and the emergency suits weren't built for the kind of harsh conditions caused by explosive decompression. "How long can the trapped technicians survive?" Jake asked. "Perhaps 20 minutes with their emergency life support," Zethka replied. "But our rescue teams cannot reach them safely. The environment is too unstable." Jake looked at Lisa and saw the same thought in her eyes. Without discussion, they both started moving toward the chamber exit. "Where are you going?" Hickstra demanded. "To help with the rescue," Jake said simply. "You cannot. It is too dangerous. You would be killed." "Maybe," Lisa said, already running calculations in her head. "But we might also save 3 lives. That seems worth the risk." The alien delegates watched in shock as the 2 humans left the assembly chamber and headed toward the disaster zone. To the aliens, this behavior confirmed every fear they had about human recklessness, but they also found themselves unable to look away as the security cameras tracked the humans' progress through the station. Jake and Lisa reached the emergency control center where alien rescue coordinators were frantically trying to find a safe way to reach the trapped technicians. When the humans arrived, the coordinator in charge, a floating being that looked like a collection of metallic spheres, immediately tried to stop them. "Absolutely not," the coordinator said. "Humans cannot be allowed into the disaster zone. The contamination risk alone would be catastrophic." 3 people are dying," Lisa said firmly. "We can reach them. You lack proper equipment and training." Jake was already examining the emergency suits available in the control center. They were clearly designed for aliens with very different physiology, but he thought they could be modified quickly. "We don't need your equipment," he said. "We just need someone to tell us where the trapped technicians are located." The rescue coordinator was still protesting when Lisa found an environmental suit that could be adapted for human use. The aliens watched in amazement as she quickly modified the life support systems and pressure regulators, working with tools and equipment she had never seen before. "You cannot survive in that environment," the coordinator insisted. "We'll find out," Jake said, putting on his own modified suit. The aliens could only watch as the two humans entered the emergency airlocks and headed into the disaster zone. Every screen in the control center showed their progress as they moved through debris fields and unstable corridors that would have killed any other species. Lisa used her medical training to navigate through areas where the station's structure had been twisted by the explosion. Jake used his diplomatic experience in crisis situations to make quick decisions about which routes were safest. Together, they moved through an environment that no other council species could have survived. When they reached the trapped technicians, they found 3 aliens who were barely conscious and close to death. The emergency had damaged their life support systems, and they were slowly suffocating in an atmosphere that had become toxic due to the system failures. Working together, Jake and Lisa carried the 3 aliens back through the disaster zone, protecting them from debris and maintaining their life support during the journey. The rescue took 43 minutes from start to finish, and by the time they returned to the control center, word of their actions had spread throughout the entire station. The security footage of 2 humans risking their lives to save 3 aliens had been broadcast to the council chamber and beyond. Delegates who had been terrified of human violence watched in silence as these same humans demonstrated exactly the opposite of what they had expected. When Jake and Lisa finally returned to the assembly chamber, still wearing their damaged emergency suits and covered in debris from the rescue, they found a very different atmosphere waiting for them. The fear was still there, but it had transformed into something else entirely. The aliens were no longer afraid that humans would hurt them. They were afraid. The Grand Assembly Chamber was completely silent when Jake Morrison and Dr. Lisa Carter returned from their rescue mission. Their emergency suits were torn and covered with debris, and they moved slowly as the adrenaline from the crisis began to fade. Every alien delegate in the chamber watched them with expressions that had changed completely from fear to something much more complex. Council, Prime Ethlun's color patterns shifted rapidly through shades that the translator couldn't interpret. Finally, she found words that came through the communication system in a voice filled with wonder and confusion. "You risked your lives to save beings you had never met," she said. "You entered an environment that should have killed you, for people who were afraid of you just hours ago." Jake pulled off his damaged helmet and looked around the chamber. "Of course we did. 3 people were in trouble. What else were we supposed to do?" The simplicity of his answer seemed to shock the aliens even more than the rescue itself. Several delegates began rapid conversations in their various languages, and the chamber filled with the sounds of clicking, humming, and color pattern communications that the translation systems couldn't handle. Counselor Hixt Raw, who had accused humans of being violent predators earlier, was now silent. His multiple arms moved nervously as he stared at the 2 humans who had just proved him both right and wrong at the same time. "You are indeed apex predators," he said finally, "but not in the way I thought." Lisa sat down heavily on their reinforced platform, exhaustion finally catching up with her. "We're not predators at all. We're just people who learn to survive on a dangerous world." Dr. Felix floated closer to them, his gaseous form swirling with what seemed like excitement. "The medical data from your rescue mission is extraordinary. You operated in an environment that would have killed any council species within minutes. Your heart rates increased to levels that should have caused system failure, yet you remained functional. Your bodies adapted to the crisis in real time. It's called an adrenaline response," Lisa explained. "When humans face danger, our bodies automatically prepare for emergency action. Increased strength, faster reflexes, higher pain tolerance. It's an evolutionary response to living on a death world." "But you didn't use these abilities to hurt anyone," said the crystalline delegate who had spoken earlier. You use them to help. Ambassador Zethka's crystal formations were flickering in patterns Jake had never seen before. We have monitored hundreds of species across the galaxy for thousands of years. No other civilization would have attempted that rescue. When we face genuine danger, we evacuate and wait for automated systems to handle the crisis. What if your automated systems can't handle it? Jake asked. The question hung in the air for a long moment before Council Prime Eth Lun answered. Then we accept the loss and mourn the dead. We have lost entire colonies to natural disasters because we lacked the ability to operate in dangerous environments. Jake was beginning to understand why the Council had really invited humanity to this meeting. It wasn't to offer them membership as equals. It was because they needed something that only humans could provide. How many worlds have you lost? Lisa asked quietly. 17 colonies in the last 1,000 years, Ethlun replied, her colors shifting to patterns the translator identified as deep sadness. Each time we could only watch as natural disasters or equipment failures claimed thousands of lives. Our technology is advanced, but it requires stable, safe conditions to function. The chamber fell silent again as the implications of this admission sank in. Jake looked around at all the alien species in their perfect environmental suits and protective barriers. They had built an amazing civilization, but it was a fragile one that couldn't handle genuine crises. The Council has been observing your species for over 50 years, Zethka said. We watched you survive disasters that would have destroyed our worlds. We saw you explore dangerous environments, develop emergency response systems, and most importantly, risk your own lives to save others. You weren't invited here to be judged, Dr. Felix added. You were invited here because we need you. Counselor Hickstra finally spoke up again, his voice much quieter than before. I called you apex predators and violence incarnate. I was wrong, but also right. You are the most dangerous species in the galaxy, but your danger comes from your willingness to sacrifice yourselves for others. Lisa looked confused. I don't understand how that makes us dangerous. Because, said a new voice from across the chamber, it means you represent something we thought was impossible. The speaker was a delegate Jake hadn't heard from before, a species that looked like a floating collection of lights and energy patterns. When it spoke, its words came through as pure sound without any physical form to create them. I am Counselor Minza of the Ethereal Collective, the being continued. My species achieved consciousness 50,000 years ago. In all that time, across all the species we have encountered, none have demonstrated what you just did. You ran toward death to save life. You embraced danger to protect safety. You are living contradictions. Jake was starting to understand what the aliens found so terrifying about humanity. It wasn't their physical capabilities or their weapons or their potential for violence. It was their fundamental nature as beings who would choose to help others, even when it meant risking everything. We're not that special, he said. Any human would have done the same thing. That's exactly what makes you special, Ethlun replied. And exactly what makes you terrifying. We have spent 50,000 years building a civilization based on avoiding risk and maintaining safety. You represent the opposite philosophy. Growth through challenge, strength through adversity, progress through sacrifice. Lisa finally understood what was happening. You want us to be your emergency responders. When disasters happen that your systems can't handle, you want humans to go in and fix them. More than that, Zethka said. We want to offer humanity a unique position in the galactic community, not as standard members, but as crisis response specialists. When civilizations face extinction-level events, when colonies are threatened by disasters, when rescue operations are needed in hostile environments, we would call upon humans. Jake considered the offer carefully. It was both an honor and a burden. Humanity would be accepted into galactic civilization, but as the people who took on the jobs that were too dangerous for everyone else. What about our own development, he asked. Our own exploration and growth? Those would continue, Minja said. But you would also serve as the galaxy's protectors against chaos and disaster. You would be feared and respected in equal measure. Lisa thought about all the lost colonies and failed rescue missions the Council had described. Thousands of lives that could have been saved if someone with human capabilities had been available to help. How many other species are there in the galaxy? She asked. Over 2,000 in our records, Ethlon replied. Most have achieved space travel but remain in their home systems. Some have joined the Council. Others have gone extinct due to natural disasters or their inability to adapt to changing conditions. And none of them are like humans. None, Dr. Felix said firmly. Your species is unique in its combination of advanced intelligence and Deathworld survivability. You are the only beings we have found who can think clearly while facing mortal danger. Jake looked at Lisa and saw his own thoughts reflected in her eyes. This wasn't the kind of diplomatic mission they had expected, but it was an opportunity to save lives across the galaxy. We'll need to discuss this with our government, Jake said, but speaking personally, I think humanity would be honored to serve in this role. Counselor Hickstra made a sound that the translator interpreted as bitter laughter. Honored to face death repeatedly for the sake of strangers. You really are impossible beings. Maybe, Lisa said with a smile. But if being impossible means saving lives, then we'll gladly be impossible. The council session ended with humanity's acceptance into galactic civilization, not as conquerors or diplomats, but as the brave souls willing to go where no other species could survive. Jake and Lisa returned to Earth carrying an offer that would change humanity's destiny forever. As their ship entered Earth's atmosphere, Lisa recorded a final message for the mission report. We came to join a galactic community and discovered we were needed more than we ever imagined. The aliens fear us not because we're violent, but because we're willing to risk everything to help others. That might be the most terrifying thing of all. The humans had left every alien in terror. But it was the terror of beings who had never imagined that courage could be so absolute, so instinctive, so beautifully dangerous. Humanity had found its place among the stars as the guardians of hope, in a universe full of unthinkable dangers.